Yes,
Got
yes,
it.
yes, yes. If you give away the existence of aliens, I will edit that out,
Edit
and
that part out.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
NASA
absolutely.
wanted to announce that some other time, so no,
Yeah,
I'm
exactly. They're saving it up
kidding.
for a big surprise, all that kind of stuff. So, so I guess we'll start off. Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Denver, Colorado. So I spent most of my life in Colorado. I recently moved to Tucson about 2 years ago, but the rest of the time has been in Colorado with like the best night skies ever. And Tucson has even better night skies. So like, yeah, those are the two places for me.
Well, so I mean, we've got people. I was talking with a gentleman in the UK earlier, like he can't see any stars. So, can you describe a
hmm
little bit more about what is an amazing night sky in Colorado?
Yeah, well, and now there's, so many people have moved to Colorado. The light pollution's a little bit different and everything like that than when I grew up. But it was really just like amazing, very clear night skies, what I would say. Like my joke is that, it's the mile high city, so like we're above all that atmosphere, so we get even like clearer. And I like spent a lot of time in southern Colorado, which has pretty dark skies and away from all the pollution even now, the light pollution, I should say. And those night skies, like one of my favorite things is going out and seeing like a winter night sky. Like my mom and I talk about this a lot. Summer night skies are amazing, and that's when you go stargazing because it's all warm and everything like that. But if you can withstand the cold, the Colorado snow and everything like that, winter night skies, like it's just crisp and clear and like very calm and peaceful and cold. But like so, winter night skies were actually some of my favorites.
Do you have a favorite constellation or a favorite planet to try and pick out?
I think I actually really like Draco, which is kind of a unique one.
Nice.
It's the dragon that like I just saw the head of it when I was younger because it's like a square, it's kind of unique. And I remember when I was younger, I was like, okay, I like that group of stars. And then as I got more into space, I learned that that was the dragon constellation, Draco, and I was like, ah, okay, that kind of ties in with like everything. I love dragons and like all this stuff, so it kind of was full circle, I guess.
That's awesome. So you talk about like going out as a kid. Was there a moment when you're like, okay, this is awesome. This is what I want to do with my life, or is it more of a gradual process?
So in terms of like the night sky, I like going out and looking up. Yes, I'm in the aerospace world and all that kind of stuff, but when I do that, that feels far more spiritual to me. It's not so much my career, it's not so much the like humans in space. That is more of my like space meditation time of like, wow, we're so small in this infinite, you know, cosmos and everything like that. Everything Carl Sagan talked about really hits true when you're looking up at the night sky. And it's like my moment to come full circle connection to humanity, connection to the universe. So that's more what I enjoy out of the night sky.
So are you actually meditating, or you're just sitting there and observing, or because we have a lot of
A
people
little
that
bit of both.
literally use it as a watch and meditate. But please
hmm
go on.
Yeah, I would say a little bit of both. I mean, like depends on, if I'm with like my family and my niece and nephews are running around, well, probably not meditating during that time,
Probably
but
hard. Yep, yep.
like
Very cool. Very cool. So now you moved from Colorado. You're now where again? Tucson?
Arizona.
So how's Arizona? Is, comparable or?
So the thing about Colorado is we've got beautiful sunsets, beautiful sunrises, beautiful night skies, everything I just talked about. And then I moved to Tucson and I was like, oh, Colorado's got nothing on Tucson. Like literally Arizona's flag is a sunset because of just how gorgeous it is here. And Tucson is a dark sky city, which means that they actually like have their their lights, their lamps are like pointed down and they're covered to try to help with the light pollution. And they do a lot of other things to help mitigate light pollution. So it's even darker here. You can see even more here. So going out and if there's like a meteor shower, an eclipse or something like that here is like dark. It is like what we were supposed to see, like what we as humans were intended to see for that stuff. It's so cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm curious then, what are your thoughts on people talking about, preserving dark sky, or this whole, discussion about building these constellations, etc. Do you want to share a little bit more about,
Yeah, it hurts me.
yeah,
Like I never want to like say anything one way or another too much because I see both sides
yeah,
pretty clearly. I would say the true side of me is like we must preserve this. Like I said, like just being able to see those things is just such an awakening and like I said, a moment of like we're all part of something greater and all these amazing things that just you need that. Like humanity, we need that, especially right now. but the progression of what we're seeing from all these constellations and what that could do for humanity as well, to me it's just kind of like maybe it's the next chapter, you know what I mean? Like maybe our great grandchildren will kind of be like looking up at the night sky watching these constellations fly around, and they're like, oh, that was so, and like maybe it's a whole different chapter that we're not aware of, and then we can tell stories of what the night sky used to be like. That kind of breaks my heart to say, but if that is what humanity is going towards, then who am I to stop that,
I mean, we're this whole thing is just about gathering people's, random thoughts. It's we have to have our place in the cosmos. Well,
Yeah.
so that was the difficult section. So you know, who are you, and tell the good folks what you do.
Yeah, hi. My name is Bailey Burns, and I'm from Colorado. I am an aerospace systems engineer, and I work on life support systems for spacecrafts and spacesuits. So basically, oxygen, pressure control, CO2 removal, everything keeping humans alive in space. Water and yes, turning your urine back into water so you can drink it, all that stuff. Everything that people don't usually think about because we don't have to worry about that here on Earth. You breathe in and you have oxygen suddenly. So that's a really exciting job. A lot of it has been more geared towards spacesuits lately, which is another very exciting topic, especially as we get ready for the moon. So that's my day job, and then the rest of the time I'm like my hobby is space as well. I do so much with the space community. I love STEM outreach. And just talking to people about space. I'm an analog astronaut, so I spent 2 weeks living in a moon base back in 2020. That was an experience. I was like ultimate quarantine level. And let's see what else. Like I'm very involved with a lot of different communities here. I do Space Kind, which is a space leadership development course. So everything I just talked about, like bringing humanity together and bringing your best self to space. So yeah, everything I do seems to somehow relate to space. Like,
Well, so explain a little bit more about this analog astronaut stuff.
okay, so yes, this is a very fun topic because I find it to be very accessible. Like, if you want to be an astronaut, that costs millions of dollars in training, and you have to be like this degree and all that sort of stuff. Analog astronauts, anyone can do it. You just have to like pick an analog astronaut site. And what that is basically you live like an astronaut. Like it's like an astronaut simulation down here on Earth. And there's a lot of reasons to do it. It kind of started with I think people wanting to do cool things in cool places. Like that's kind of how it started. That's how like a lot of space things start. But it's really morphed into this whole organization of people who are trying to figure out how to do space the right way, and asking these questions and finding answers like crew dynamics. How do you handle conflict in space when you're all like inside this tin can and someone's mad at someone else? How do you not like throw someone out the airlock and like kill them? You know what I mean? Like we can't be doing that in space. Or like there's a lot of like human psychology studies going on, or human factors. So like how does lighting affect the crew? How does sleep schedules affect the crew? There's a lot of food studies going on of like, okay, can they eat this much dehydrated food, or this makes this food taste better, or that sort of thing. A lot of like plant stuff like algae, like using algae as a CO2 scrubber, which we have actual CO2 scrubbers with like charcoal beds and stuff. But the thought is like, oh well, we could use algae to do that, and then you can also have algae growing and it's cleaner, and you could probably use the algae as a food source. So it's a lot of these like crazy questions of people with crazy expertise here on Earth on an area that doesn't relate to science, like space, and then being like, how do I turn this into space? Or even if you're not one of those people with crazy expertise in an area, it's how do I help those people get the information and the data that they need to be successful, which is more my role. I'm more of a like, sure, I'll eat whatever, like I'll give you my thoughts on whatever, and just let me go live in a moon base for a little bit, and we'll be good. Like,
Well, so that's so awesome. So, this whole idea of uh industries or areas of expertise that are not traditionally associated, like they're not, building rockets or things like that, but integrating them because, if we are going to live off world, we need everything. So, what are your thoughts on this whole idea? Like, all right, if someone is in industry that like doesn't see themselves as like part of space, like how do you see the whole role? Like, all right, no, it's really useful. Like, how do you make that decision point, or that how do you convince them or make the case that no, their skills are useful off world?
I think the biggest thing is just opening their eyes up to what is going on off world. Like everything we see right now, especially in the space industry. The cool thing is rockets, right? Like I don't work in rockets, so when like if I were to post a picture of what I do, people would be like, that's just a box. And I'm like, yeah, it's just, you know what I mean? Like it's not super cool. But all these crazy rocket pictures are coming out. And there's literally that saying, it's not rocket scientist, as if rocket scientist is like the hardest thing in the it's very difficult, but like it seems very unapproachable. It seems like and that's all we really see, right? Is rockets and maybe spacesuits and that kind of thing. But there's thousands of jobs outside of just that one picture that you're seeing of what's going on. The people behind it are program managers, right? Like every industry has program managers. If you're a program manager, that is an easy switch to just learn space programs instead of whatever program you're doing. That's super easy. Or like one of my favorites was back in the Apollo era, they were having spacesuit things, like they had to make these spacesuits and everything like that, and that they were having issues and blah blah blah, and the people who were brought in were just kind of your everyday housewife seamstress, because they know how to sew fabric and they can do it like very tight stitches and everything like that. And so a lot of the Apollo suits were worked on by people without degrees, women without degrees. Women kind of saved the day a little bit on that because they were such good seamstresses. And actually, the head of our spacesuit division at my company, he started his career as a costume designer for like theater and shows and that kind of stuff. And so it's really clear to me that you can do whatever you. I just want to like get this out there. Is like figure out what your passion is here on Earth, because that's the important thing, is having that passion and having that aspect of yourself. And then come talk to someone like me and I'll be like, oh, this is how it applies to space, because I can tell you that whatever you're doing here on Earth has some sort of application in space as well. Like for me, my big thing is people, right? Like I love people, I love supporting people, and keeping people happy, healthy, feeling alive, all those different things. So what did I get into? I got into life support, which is helping people stay alive, right? Like my passion is not life support and CO2 scrubbers and stuff and oxygen control. It's keeping humans happy and healthy and alive. And then I just learned how to apply that up to space.
So what, I mean, we all have, for those watching this in the crazy future, there's this thing called 2020 where a lot of people were stuck inside.
I don't know
But
if you heard of it, but
who knows? But how do you go? Because the analog astronaut stuff obviously seems very important, studying how people actually interact. But what are the challenges still to meet? Do we need to just make sure there's better menus on the ISS, or is it, making sure there's a racquetball court or something like that? What do humans need for us to have like our first like big actual town? ISS is,
Mhm.
fairly large, but it's not a town, it's not a city, it's not
Yeah,
these
it's still kind of
things that
like
we
a space RV. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. The space RV, very very technical space RV, yes.
NASA, please don't hate me for saying that, but that's kind of what it is right now. It's kind of an extended stay. But
That's
um
Winnebago, yes.
recommend it, yeah. Yeah, I guess I honestly I can't say like there's just so much we have to figure out still. Like for me in life support, I obviously can talk about that very well. And right now I believe the ISS, okay, so let me back up for a second. The big thing with life support is closing the loop, right? Because in whatever you have, however well sealed it is, there's always a leak, like a leak rate of oxygen. And then water, you always can't reclaim all that water that humans use. There's always like some level of, we can't get all that. And so I believe the ISS started with something like a 70% closed loop. Like closed loop means it's 100%, you got all of it back and you just have like a perfect little ecosystem. And I believe the ISS started with something like 70%, which means like as you go through a cycle, 30% of that stuff had to be replaced, which meant more rocket launches with more water, more oxygen, all that sort of stuff back up. And that's fine, because the ISS, it takes 6 minutes to get to space from Earth. Like obviously it takes longer to get to the ISS, but just to hit space, it takes 6 minutes. It's
Mhm.
not that far away, right? But when we start going to the moon and Mars, that's not a 6 minute trip, or even like a 6 hour trip. That's days, months. So we have to figure out how to get that to as close to 100% as we can. And so now I think ISS is about 90%. Paragon has some technology on there that's gotten like the water reclamation from urine is up to like 97%. So like we're getting there, we're closing the loop, but it's just pieces here and there that we're figuring out, and we really need to. It's called like I have like a regenerative ecosystem where you can keep everything, like I mean that's Earth is a perfect example. Like we have the water cycle that you learned about with like condensation, evaporation. We have all that taken care of. You know, we've got this like CO2, the trees take in our CO2 and they give out oxygen. And so we have oxygen, like all these cycles are perfectly figured out in this perfect balance on Earth. And that's something that we have not figured out in space at all. And like, that's like, if you want humans in space, oxygen and water are like the most crucial things. So, and that's just like one example of my industry that I know best. You know, we've got to figure out rocket launch, like getting that cost down so that people can actually have that accessible. We need to figure out an energy source, because what we do here on Earth is not going to fly in space, because we got, you know, like we need so much energy to do different things, and we need reliable energy that isn't going to go out with a solar flare. So there's so many different problems that people are thinking about. Obviously these are more technical that the analog astronaut community, you know, can kind of guide its way into. Like that's what I was talking about with the algae and everything like that really helps with the regenerative eclipse, environmental control and life support systems. That's what I do, ECLIS. So that's what they're looking at. But in terms of like analog astronauts are really good at looking at the people side, which is not something that we've studied. You know, back in the 60s, they just threw a bunch of fighter pilots together, right? Like they were just like, you guys will figure it out. And they were tough enough to like, you know, figure it out. But there was a lot of like ego and conflict with that because of the nature of the people. And so now we're trying to figure out how to make it so, you know, introverts and extroverts can go to space, and you know, like, or you know, very different personalities is basically what I'm saying. Is you don't have to be this extreme test pilot to go to space. You can be an everyday person who is really good with interpersonal communication, and you can help alleviate tension on the crew, and like that kind of aspect. Or you can be a really strong leader and a commander who can make decisions on the fly. You know, we need someone in that position. Or you're a super organized mind who can like keep the logistics going. There's all these different roles that need to be filled, and I think analog astronauts are really good at figuring out what their skill is. Like going into the habitat for me, I didn't know what to expect, and I came out with like a better understanding of myself and like what my skills are and what I can offer to a crew now because of that.
Very cool. Very cool. So there's a, I assume there's a bunch of these places around where you can do analog astronaut. Is there, you know, just in one particular spot? I know there's the high seas one, and then there's just all around. People can generally just
Yeah.
find them if they're looking up.
Yeah, so I did high seas. That was an absolute amazing experience, because that was on the side of a volcano. So we explored lava tubes. That's where I became like, I call myself an enthusiast geologist, because like I just fell in love with rocks and lava tubes after that. So that's a really good one. There's other ones. There's some like in the Mojave Desert. That's MDRS. There's a couple up in Canada. There's one in Poland called Lunares. That's an amazing one. I need to go visit that one still. That'd be awesome. There's another one that's in Iceland that they're working on. There's one in Spain. There's some actually underwater. There's a couple of underwater areas. There's one called Nemo where like the EVAs, the spacewalks, are scuba dives, because they're kind of similar operations. And so yeah, they're literally all over the world. And we're working on a community right now that pulls them all together so that you can like, it's not just like, who do you know that knows of these places? We can actually like, you know, show you the map of where everything is, and get more people involved. But they're all over the world. And then each one has their own little specialty. Like I said, like High Seas was really good with like the geology side of things. Lunares, which is the one in Poland, has their spacewalks kind of take place in their own little hangar, which means they don't really have the geology, but they've got amazing opportunities to do like operations research, or like if you've got a rover and you want to see if it'll actually work, you take it to Lunares, you know. So it really depends on where you are and what that like what you want to learn about, because each analog has its own flavor of like what they're good at.
Awesome. Very cool. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a link to each one of them in the
Cool.
video description.
Yeah,
So
I'll
people
send
can,
you if you need, like I can send you what we have too.
yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. So I guess my last thing is, so a lot of people are going to be seeing, there's going to be, of course, people from the space industry, but there's also going to be people that, you know, haven't taken that first step. So what would be your suggestion for people that are on that kind of threshold?
That's a good question. I mean, I think my first thought is like, what are you waiting for? You know what I mean? Like just jump in, the water's fine, we're super friendly. It's one of the most this industry, which I'm sure you've seen, is very close, very tight knit. It's a very like safe industry to get involved with. Like when you find those people who are just excited about space, like that's a very easy thing to do. but I understand that we can be a little intimidating and like, like I said, it's not rocket scientist. It's a dumb phrase because it makes it seem unapproachable. But um, I think the biggest thing is, like I said, figuring out what you like here on Earth. What are you super passionate about cooking? Are you super passionate about and food, or like nutrition and like health? Or are you really passionate about clothing and you can go into like being a spacesuit expert? It's figuring out what you like here and like what really gets you going down here on Earth, and then figuring out how that applies up to space. And that's a process to do. And the best way to do that is just reach out to people and just talk to them and just be a friendly, um, inquisitive person that's just learning more about the space industry. And the biggest, like, you will find your way if you listen to yourself, if you like listen to like, oh, that got me really excited, or just believe in yourself, listen to yourself. When you hear those things, it'll be really obvious what your path is, what the universe is trying to tell you.
Awesome. Awesome. Can't think of a better way to end that. Thank you so much, Bailey.
Yeah, thank you.